Will casuals ruin the new Battleground Blitz mode coming in the War Within? Obviously the answer is no, and I'm surprised I even have to make a video about this, but I saw a post on Twitter the other day that gave me pause, and realized that there is a discussion we need to have amongst ourselves as a PvP community now that we have the chance to have a mode which appeals to a broader audience and could possibly get us more people to join our PvP community. So let's jump right into it. I'll go ahead and post the picture on the screen now. There is a Twitch comment. I don't know whose channel this happens to be from, but I ended up grabbing this from my friend Mortai's Twitter page of an individual that says, "This is what I'm worried about, that solo rated BGs is going to be infested with casuals who don't know how to PvP." There's a couple things to break down from this post, but the first thing I want to do is make a concession that this individual does kinda have a point, albeit not a very good one. And that being is that if you are trying out Battlegrounds for the first time, it does make sense to do so in an unrated setting where there are things in place such as gear scaling, and you don't really have anything on the line that you're risking right off the bat when you're just getting started and learning how to PvP. That is somewhat of a merit point, but the larger thing I want to go into more detail on is the purpose of Battleground Blitz, and I think how a lot of the PvP community is viewing it the wrong way. So, the purpose of Battleground Blitz is to make rated battlegrounds a more accessible mode for the larger PvP base via a solo queue system, and duo queue if you happen to be a healer. I personally do not believe that Battlegrounds will be as sweaty of a bracket as Arena, because you really don't need to do a whole lot extra in order to win or lose a match. You just need the basics, the fundamentals, and a solid understanding of macro play will take you a lot further than having to know every single minor nuance of your class. That being said, Battleground Blitz's purpose, or the solo rated Battleground format, is supposed to be that first rated game mode that people can step into when they're trying to get into PvP. Because Arena in itself is a completely different game mode that not only requires a slightly different set of skills, but it also requires more skills and puts more responsibility on each individual in the team in order to succeed. So if anything, I think that if I were ranking them from the first bracket I would enter to the last bracket, starting out in PvP, if you really wanted to try your hand at rated PvP, I would start with Battleground Blitz. I think the mode is super fun. It's a fantastic introduction into PvP, and once you get your bearings down, once you start to learn the classes a little bit more, once you start to science, maybe you can even try out some 2v2s, because that's not really a serious bracket as is, then you can try your hand at solo shuffle. What is Arena like in a solo queue context? You start to learn the more finer details, such as understanding your kill targets, understanding diminishing returns, and how they are significantly more important than just sending out your crowd control in a battleground setting. You start to learn that kiting is important too. You start to learn that avoiding damage can be slightly more efficient than just raw trading cooldowns pound for pound. And then when you have an idea of what you're doing there, you can either choose to stay in the solo bracket and push your solo skills to the absolute limit, or you could jump in the LFG group, you could go to Twitch or Twitter or whatever platform you have, try to find some teammates, and then try your hand at the rated 3v3 bracket. Maybe if it's your first season, you push for Rival. Maybe if it's your second or third, you want to push for Duelist. Or if you've been playing for a little bit longer, maybe you want to push for Gladiator. And while this is just my personal opinion, I feel as though this is the most effective, efficient way for a beginner to get integrated into the PvP community. This sort of leads me to my second point, where a lot of people in the PvP community, if they get hard stuck, they sort of feel justified. They take this really weird approach where rather than trying to look at what's wrong with their own gameplay, see what they can do to improve, see what they can do to try and carry a match, they instead put the blame on everybody else for themselves being stuck at the rating of which they are at. I do think this will happen a lot more in a battleground, because the responsibility of a loss will be split between 8 people as opposed to the standard 3 in Arena, so it's going to be a little bit more difficult to pinpoint exactly who screwed up. And because a lot of people who play WoW PvP don't really play a ton of other modes, they're not really used to this sort of 30-30-40 mindset, where 30% of your games, it doesn't matter what you do, you will just lose. You get a bad draw of teammates who happen to int, they do the wrong thing at the wrong time, and even though you're playing your best, it is physically impossible to carry them. Then you get 30% of the games that you will automatically win because you happen to draw a better team than the enemy team, where your team is at the team fights at the right place, your team is capturing the right bases at the right time, maybe you have a really good flag carrier on your team, and it doesn't matter if you happen to sandbag your team or even if you are playing well, you are just going to win. Then there's going to be a slightly larger variable that we'll call the remaining 40%, where your actions, your gameplay has an influence on if you win or lose that 40% of games. So in an ideal world where you play absolutely perfectly all the time, you would have a win rate of about 70%, and on the lower end, if you are just not really that great of a player, you'll have a win rate of about 30%. Why I set this up and why I gave all this explanation is to lead me to this overall point of which, if you are a good enough player in this new rated Battleground mode, you will carry yourself out of the bracket where the casuals are at. Even if a casual decides to start playing rated PvP at the beginning, their base MMR is 1500. The average WoW player is somewhere between 1600 and 1800, and then the bell curve kind of splits out from there. So realistically speaking, if you queue up at the beginning of the season and you have a bunch of casuals on your team, give it 2 or 3 weeks, they will still be at 1500. If they play a lot of games and happen to have a negative win rate, they may be even at 1400. So in theory, if you are doing what you need to be doing and you just win even a couple of games, your MMR should surpass that of a casual who doesn't know how to PvP. And you shouldn't have those people in your games in the matter of, say, 10 games played. And that for me is where this whole argument becomes moot at. I feel like people get this really weird idea of like PvP YouTubers or rank 1 players or gladiators, where they see the highlights of these videos uploaded to YouTube and they believe that this is always how their games go. But if you tune into Peekaboo's stream, for instance, you will see him lose all the time to like other 1800 players or 2100 players. But how is a player like Peekaboo or Vinruki or whoever able to obtain rank 1 in Gladiator time and time again? It is because they win significantly more than they lose. It is simply the law of averages. So if your win rate is above 50%, you should be fine. This should not even be an issue for you. But the last thing I want to do is I want to close out with a point that I think the PvP community as a whole really needs to hear. Look, I get it. We have been fucked over time and time again by Blizzard, by the developers, by whatever, because we are a minority community. This game was large in part not made for us, but we are a faction who loves the game and we love our corner of the game. And against all odds, we still love and enjoy this game for what it is. That's cool. But even though we are a minority community, that should not give us reason to feel as though we are superior to casual PvPers or that we are somehow superior to all PvE players. Because now that Blizzard has finally given us a new avenue that can help us recruit people to get into PvP and can help other Warcraft players who either had reservations or they've had bad experiences in the past actually be able to jump in and enjoy PvP for what it is, we shouldn't be trying to shit on them for wanting to come in and try their hand at rated PvP. If anything, we should be welcoming them with open arms, because these are the people who are going to fill out the ladder over time. They're going to start off at the bottom and they're going to rise their way up. So we have a chance of seeing new faces at the top end of the ladder. And if you are as good of a player as you say you are, you should be farming these people. But at the end of the day, having a larger pool of players in the ladder will create an overall healthier game and ladder balance. But that's all for today, folks. I know this video seems a little bit more emotionally charged than usual, but I do believe as a PvP community, we really should check ourselves going into the war within, because even if the glory days of PvP aren't behind us, that doesn't mean we should deny ourselves the possibility of a resurgence. And I do believe that BG Blitz could be the avenue for that. So if you like what you saw, it would mean a lot if you could support my channel, but until next time, this is Moon signing out.